Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another virtual San Diego Comic-Con 2020 panel with Titan Comics. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining us. We've got a fantastic panel full of talent for you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them all to you. We have with us Jody Houser. Jody Houser is a comic book author who wrote the 2017 comic adaptation of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. She also wrote the comic adaptation of Thrawn, a novel by Timothy Zahn, as well as Poe Dameron Annual #2. She also wrote the Star Wars Age of Republic comic book miniseries and Doctor Who for Titan. We've got Roberta Ingranata. Roberta has worked for Italian publishing houses like Delos Books, Star Comics as an interior artist, Bonelli, Astorina, Egmont, Mondadori, and also Disney as a colorist. In 2016, she started working for Image on Witchblade, such an awesome book. And in 2019, started working with Titan Comics on Doctor Who. We have my friend Enrica Eren Angiolini, an accomplished fencer and a skilled colorist. Enrica has colored books such as Doctor Who, the 13th Doctor, Shades of Magic, The Steel Prince, Warhammer 40,000, all for us at Titan, and the upcoming Sex Criminals, Sexual Gary for Image. Sex Criminals is an amazing book if you haven't checked it out yet. In addition to the creator-owned comic Temerity, Enrica lives and works in between Italy and the UK. Also joining us, we have the hardest working man at Titan, Jake Devine. Jake's one of our senior editors and he edits most of our Doctor Who comics. He also edits Star Wars Collector Editions, Tank Girl, Robotech, the Bloodborne franchise, and all of our static press titles, including Snowpiercer. And then we have the British comics legend that is David Leach, our senior creative editor. David Leach is the creator of many well-known humour strips in the UK, such as The Driver, such as Psycho Gran, such as the small press book, David Leach Conquers the Universe, which I urge you to pick up if you've never seen it before. It's wonderful. And he's our senior creative editor at Titan, and he looks after Blade Runner 2019, Fighting American, The Phantom of the Opera, Dander, and The Prisoner. And last, but by no means least, we're joined by writer, producer, webmaster James Goss. James has been involved with Doctor Who for 20 years, and in that time, he's done just about everything. He's written numerous Doctor Who and Tortured novels, radio dramas and audio dramas. He's written his own novels, including Haters and the Lady Serpent series. He's written stage plays, including the awesome Seven Spies at the Casino, about the making of the 1967 version of Casino Royale. I'm not kidding, one of mine and the big guy's favorite movies. He's also produced my all-time favorite classic Doctor Who project, the animated restoration of the classic second Doctor adventure, The Invasion. Now, I vividly remember watching episode 6 of that with my great-grandmother, Nanny Sumner, in Seaforth Docks in Liverpool in December 1968. And I really couldn't believe it when James and his team reassembled that. Such amazing work. And above all of that, he is the architect and overlord of Time Lord Victorious. And so, James, we're all here to talk about Doctor Who Time Lord Victorious, a new way to enjoy Doctor Who. James, what is Time Lord Victorious?
Well, I'm just finishing a boiled sweet, so this could go wrong, and I could die. Time Lord Victorious is a multi-platform event which unites all of the BBC's licensees to tell an epic Doctor Who story across various platforms. So it's comics, it's audio dramas, it's novels, it is gaming, it is an escape room, there's an immersive theatre experience. Weirdly, there are toys. It's massive and it's incredibly fun, but at the same time, the project has been designed so that it's incredibly accessible. So the idea is that if you've only ever read a Titan comic, then you can pick up the comics, just read the comics and go, that was brilliant. That was a story. I loved that. But hopefully you'll reach the end of the Titan comics and go, that was brilliant. That was a story. I loved that. Now I'm going to go and pick up a book. Now I'm going to pick up an audio drama. It is a huge project. And one of the reasons why it's so huge is because all of the various Doctor Who licensees have been really enthused about it and have been coming and are still coming forward and saying, can we do this? We've had a thought, we can do that. The best conversation I've had so far is somebody leaning forward and saying, yes, but can you tell a story on a T-shirt? I'm still trying to work that one out. If we can, we certainly will. But it is great, it's exciting, it's enthusiastic, but as far as Titan are concerned, it means that they get to do the 10th Doctor meets the Daleks, and I should probably shut up now.
Right on. And on that note, one thing I was going to ask everybody on the panel, but I'd like to start with you, Jody, is Doctor Who's been translated to comic form many times before. What do you think makes this new series special and different to what's come before? And what's come before has been awesome.
I mean, I think it very much plays into what James was saying, is that this is such a huge story that sprawls out in so many different mediums. So I think the fact that we get to tell the part of the story that works best in comics, but then you can like transition over and see or listen to the type of story that works best in audio drama. So I think it's getting to take a piece of a bigger story and just trying to see how it best works being in comics rather than just focusing on a comic series as a comic series.
Yeah, fantastic. Jake, how did you feel when you found out you're going to be a part of this whole new iconic undertaking?
It was definitely very exciting because I'd heard about the project, like thrown about, for a few like months or so before I actually took over Doctor Who, and it's one of these things that sort of seemed to be in the air for years. We're not sure what actually is going to happen with it. So the fact that now I'm in Doctor Who and this is actually happening, it's quite an amazing, special, and definitely a lucky thing to be a part of, I think.
Fantastic. And Roberta, how about yourself, mate?
Very lucky because I'm totally fan of Doctor Who, and 10th Doctor. So for me, it was a very beautiful opportunity, and because it's as creating an amazing team with Jake, Jody, and Enrica, and I work very well with this team. So when they told me then that I would take part of this project, I was very excited because I think this project is very, very big and very important. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jody, how did you approach writing the story and making it your own? Did it differ from the other projects that you've worked on for us on Doctor Who?
I mean, definitely, because it is part of a larger puzzle. So you had to make sure that the piece is going to fit in that larger puzzle, whereas most of the other comics we've done have really only referred to other comics. So there is very much more necessity to be aware of what else is going on in the larger scope of the project and make sure that you aren't doing anything that conflicts or cues too close to what someone else is doing. And so it's still like a unique chapter.
Yeah. Fantastic. Roberta, what inspiration have you used to visually create the world of Time Lord Victorious? I'm thinking in particular in terms of the new Alien.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think the background is very particular, so I can use my imagination because aliens, city, fantasy city, I can draw everything. So I think this is the best part of a comic artist, because I can draw everything I want, and because this city don't exist, so I can do everything. So this is the best part of this comic for me.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a wonderful thing about the medium.
Yeah.
Before we keep getting into the specifics of the project, something I'd like everybody to answer in turn, please, is what was your entree to Doctor Who? And who's your favourite Doctor? Big guy, let's start with you.
My entree is an odd one because when I was a kid, I lived in Ealing. I lived on a road called the High Street, and that's where they filmed the Autons. breaking through the windows of John Sanders. Unfortunately, I was on holiday when that happened, and so I missed it. And I was a kid, a little kid. I can't remember how old I was. But I can remember when I saw the episode on television, I couldn't believe that it actually filmed down my street, and they saw the entrance to my flat, where my parents lived, obviously. And I never wanted to go on holiday ever again after that. So I think that's my earliest memory of Doctor Who was I couldn't believe they'd filmed it right outside my house, and I missed it.
Fantastic. How about you, Enrica?
For me, I've always known of Doctor Who because it's not as huge as it can be here in Britain, but in Italy it still has quite a big following. And when I was in uni, many of my friends and many of my mates were huge Doctor Who fans, so I was absolutely aware of the stories, of the characters, but I never watched. I've watched some bits, but never like full episodes. And then I got a bit more into it when I started working with Titan, and they told me, we're starting this new project. We would like to have you on board. So I binge watched everything I could because I really wanted to be prepared and just like be faithful to the imagery and the story. So that's where it started. And I would say, of course, the 13th Doctor is quite special for me because it's my entry into the Doctor Who world and the universe. But I would probably say that the 12th Doctor is my special favorite one.
Fantastic. That's what I think is one of the wonderful things about Who is everybody has a different favorite. I love hearing the way that people get into this fantastic property. How about yourself, Jody?
Growing up in the US, I was vaguely aware of Doctor Who because I did have friends who watched it. They aired it on PBS over here. But the first time I actually watched was when they aired the 8th Doctor movie on TV in the late 90s. So that was my entry to Doctor Who, which was a little weird. And I definitely get weird looks from folks when I tell them that. But then I knew of Doctor Who pretty well then when the new series launched on, I think it started on Sci-Fi in the US. So yeah, I'm like, I remember that was a cool character, sure. So I jumped on board and have been watching ever since. And I always say my favorite Doctor is whichever was the Doctor in the last episode I watched. But if I had to choose one, it's probably 10.
Yeah, so right. Yeah. That's two great answers. How about yourself, Jake?
So for me, I have a vague memory of the 8th Doctor movie being on TV. I was quite young, so at the time, I don't think I really realized it was Doctor Who or was aware of what Doctor Who was, but I still remember looking back, that's what it was. So that was like my first ever impression of Doctor Who. But it was only until like the 2005 revival that I actually got into it. I was like, wow, I actually really love this. This is all me, sci-fi, time travel, all that. So I think for it's hard to say my favorite, but I mean, the 9th Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, has definitely made a good impression on me because he was my first Doctor. So I think him would be the top, I guess, out of all of them. But it's hard to choose.
Yeah, he's a fantastic choice, I think. And how about yourself, Roberta?
I don't know. I've always been a fan of Doctor Who, so I'm not sure I have a single favorite Doctor. But I love so much David Tennant, so I think the 10th Doctor was the best.
Yeah. And James, thank you. And James, how about yourself?
Well, the thing I love is the great thing about being old is getting to meet people who say, oh, I loved the 10th Doctor when I grew up. I really like watching the old stuff, with Christopher Eccleston. And it's that lovely thing where you just go, so much else. But that's what's brilliant. It's a show where whatever answer you give is absolutely right.
Yeah. What was
and
the
you
first...
always get into it at the right point for you.
What was the first episode that you watched?
Oh, actually, the wrong episode. I watched an episode where Doctor Who fell off a tower and died. So I was confused. And then he turned into a young man, and I was like, Mum, what is this? And Mum was like, yeah, you might like it.
So was that the last Baker episode was the first one you saw?
Yeah, first Doctor Who I ever saw, Doctor Who died.
Wow.
Not from there.
Yeah, so real quick, the first episode I saw, I don't remember, because I actually saw the first episode, or rather I was in front of it, but I was 1 month old at the time, and it was my great-grandmother's habit to watch Doctor Who with me sat on her lap. And that went straight through from when I was 0 years old to when I was 5 or 6 years old. And in fact, episode 6 of The Invasion was the last episode we watched together because it scared me too much. And I gave up Doctor Who for a period of time after that. And it was only when I was in primary school and my friends around me were like, oh, you've got to watch Doctor Who. And I'm like, oh, it's too scary. We go, no, it's in colour now and he's different and he's blonde, he's got curly hair, you need to see it. So that's when I started watching it again, probably around about the time of the Green Death. But, you know, again, the great thing about Doctor Who is it traverses generations and cultures. And I think and it's all things to all people, which I think is such a wonderful thing. Jody, you've been writing the 13th Doctor for a couple of years now. How's it been writing the 13th Doctor for a couple of years now? How's it been writing a solo outing for the 10th Doctor?
It's actually pretty fun because the first story I worked on for Titan was the backups in the Road to 13. So I did write just a few page story with 10 to sort of kick off this whole journey with Titan. So it's sort of getting back to that. And of course, we just did the arc with 10 and 13 together. So I was already writing 10 a fair bit before this story. But I think the thing that makes this stand out is it's really the first longer piece I've done with Doctor Who that doesn't have any companions in it. So it's really just the Doctor on his own dealing with stuff and not necessarily having that sounding board that he's so used to as a support for everything that's going on. And when you're just surrounded by Daleks, I guess you just end up talking to Daleks a lot, whether or not you want to. Right
on. That really makes me think of another thing I wanted to ask you, which is, do you have any particular methods to help you get into the right frame of mind when writing for Doctor Who? Do you rewatch or read older stories? Do you sit there talking to Daleks in your mind? You know, how do you approach it?
Definitely, I feel if I'm not in the right mindset for a particular Doctor's voice, I will go back and watch an episode or two to just sort of refresh their very particular cadence of speaking. But also I have a thing where when I'm writing dialogue, I try to play it in my mind in the actor's voice. And if I can hear it and hear them delivering the dialogue, I feel like it's probably the right dialogue. And if it doesn't sound right or I can't make it work with that voice, then I go back and change it until it does.
Yeah.
But Jody, I've got a question for you then, which is that do you make when you're writing the Dalek dialogue, do you make Dalek sounds in your head?
Yes, and sometimes I try to do a very poor Dalek impression, which I will not.
Oh, go on, please.
Oh, come on, mate, you've got to do it now.
Doctor! There's a reason I'm a writer and not a Dalek actor.
What's your Dalek impression, big guy? I know you've got one.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
Much better than mine. So.
I practice.
Hey, Jake, I wanted to ask you, because there's so much media on Doctor Who, from comics to television shows, how do you find how do you keep everything new and fresh? What's your approach to sense check the fact that we're delivering something that people haven't experienced before?
I think it's like with comics, you know, because there's no budget or anything like that. You've just got free reign in the imagination, and I think it's just coming up with stories that you can't necessarily do on TV, things that people would like to see, but you know, it might be too tricky for budget reasons, or you know, not getting the actors you want, etc. So I think it's thinking, you know, what are the stories we can tell with the people we want to tell, with the characters, with the places we want to go. That really feeds into, you know, the sort of stories we want to tell. For instance, this one, you know, you can have as many Daleks as you want in it that he's fighting. You can go to Skaro. You know, you don't need to worry about people designing it. You've got a great run of imagination. You know, Roberta can draw the whole planet if she wanted to. You know, it's great.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is indeed the beauty of comics. Hey, to step back into the genesis of Time Lord Victorious for a second, James, could you just give us a flavour of what the road to creating this experience has been, and what the initial spur was for you doing it? How did it all come about?
I just went, which is a sign. But the BBC basically called me in for a meeting and said, we want to do this project. We've had an idea that it should be called Time Lord Victorious. Good luck.
Yeah.
You know, that was very kind of them. And then I came up with some thoughts and they said, oh, this looks good. And then nothing happened for a few months. And then in typical BBC fashion, they just went, yep, it's all happening, start. By the way, you probably should have started 6 weeks ago, but go! And what's great is getting to have lots and lots of meetings with all the various Doctor Who licensees and going, what do you want to do? How can we fit into this? And everybody, instead of going, oh, it's you. This is what we want to do. We really want to do this. We really want to do that. And things like getting to meet Nick, who runs Titan and therefore is all of your boss, actually getting to meet him because he's such a legend. Nick and Viv are just unique people. And getting to understand his perspective on what makes comics work. So I'm there going, well, we were thinking we could do this. And he's there going, no. And, you know, it's just...
Was he doing this when he said it? Was it that? That's the famous Nick Landau spectacle push. You know, when he's about to go, this is a key, by the way. Nick, if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're ever in a meeting with Nick, if he sits there and goes, you know, a key point is coming at that moment. It's never, do you know, I'd really rather like a donut. It's never that. It's always something extremely cutting to the center of the matter when the glasses go up the nose. So I suspect it was one of those moments.
Yeah. But the thing is that it's worked in that we're doing a project that I think it's at least 10 different platforms. It's about 35 different products. I'm trying to learn to be all business-like here and say products, but it's just the idea that this thing is massive and it's really fun. And actually getting to see stuff, my life is, I am literally being paid to listen to audio drama, read manuscripts of novels, and read comics. This is never going to happen in my life again, and it's really very fun. And, you know, this is suddenly the really golden bit of the project that makes all the meetings worthwhile. I mean, getting to see the comic art, which I finally got around to looking at this morning, just go, does it look beautiful? I mean, it just looks so lovely. Yeah. And it's expensive and epic, and it immediately gets what you want the project to look like. You genuinely want this to be the Doctor Who project that you can take home to meet your mum. This is Doctor Who that is accessible, it's epic, it's awesome, and that's what the Titan comic is. You just look at it and go, yes, please.
Well, on behalf of the extremely talented people who are putting this book together, I just want to thank you, because the thing is, Jake and David, when you put together these guys on the book, Jody, Roberta, and Enrica, you really assembled the A-team of who could possibly have done it. And we've all been blown away when we've seen the pages come through. And we're all just so happy with it. So, you know, virtual round of applause from Doctor Who fandom for you guys, because you've just done a fantastic job. Such a fantastic job. It's been such a pleasure. And on that note, let me ask you a question, Roberta. Are there any Doctor Who aliens or monsters out there that you would really like to illustrate that you haven't had the chance to do yet?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Oh yeah. So are there any kind of Doctor Who villains or aliens, you know, from the world of Doctor Who? Is there anything out there you'd like to illustrate that you haven't had the chance to do yet?
Oh my God, my audio is totally out. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah. I'll tell you what. I'm going to ask the same. I'll ask the same question a different way to you, Jody. Is there anybody out there you'd like to cover from the Doctor Who pantheon that you haven't had the chance to do so yet?
Well, I wrote Missy for a few pages, but I would love to write more Missy or another incarnation of the Master, because just the back and forth with the Doctor is so fun, and I love getting that sort of just banter but evil.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, that's I think still one of the things I would love to write the most in Doctor Who.
Fantastic. Jake, do you have any parts of the Who universe that you'd really like to get stuck into that you haven't had a chance to look at yet?
Just a tough one. I mean, probably as many different Doctors as I can, you know. So we've got 13 and 10 under my belt now. So I think maybe 9 or 11 would be great. You know, all the ones that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Love to do stuff with those.
Fantastic. That'd be lovely. How about yourself, big guy? Because, you know, you've been a fan all your life.
Yeah, but I'm an old man, so I'm always going to lumber towards my youth and what I loved in my youth. I mean, for me, my favourite Doctor was Tom Baker. I just thought he was fantastic. There was something about him I thought was adorable. I mean, I'd love to do something with Tom Baker. You know, that'd be yeah. Tom Baker versus the Yetis. That'd be something I'd like to do.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I mean, I'm an old school fan like you, but I actually it so happens that my favourite Doctor is Eccleston because he's a Northerner. So that's what that's why he gets my vote. So Enrica, what I'd like to ask you is, what part of the comic thus far have you enjoyed colouring the most? Particular backgrounds, character scenes. What have you got the most out of it so far?
Well, I think colouring the Doctor is always one of my favourite things. As Jody mentioned, when we worked on the Road to Doctor to the 10th Doctor, and we had Missy and we had Capaldi and we had all those like cool companions. So I think that like working on a character is always really fun, and especially when I get to put a little bit more extra work in a few things. So, for example, the suit with the stripes and the neckties, or the like small details that sometimes you might not notice right away, but I think that really add a little bit of that special touch to each one of them, bringing them kind of more alive on the page. So I think that's really fun to get to work on.
That's great. Do you think you could give us a sense of how it is you use colour to define like tension and mood on a comic page? Could you talk through that process a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in general, color theory is kind of a key standard point from like to keep always in mind when I work. So some colors have some specific meanings to them or some kind of emotions attached to them. So of course, colors like red and oranges are usually more for tense and aggressive situations. Yellow is usually associated with fear or shock. So I try and like probably colors like blue or maybe light lilacs or pinks are generally like more relaxed and like more comfortable colors. So I try to incorporate those with the kind of iconic Doctor Who palettes, so like the clothes and the backgrounds and the locations that usually like we've grown to know in the series. So I always try and find a way to mix the very recognizable characters and backgrounds with some like the touches like the special effects or lights and lens flares and all of the like cool, more maybe TV-like effects that you would see, and try to mix them all together and create something that is faithful to the imagery but also cool and dynamic.
That's fantastic. I mean, you've done an amazing job, and again, you know, the art, the way that all the visuals look from yourself and Roberta just look fantastic. Just look so on point. Such a treat to be able to look at, actually. So it's been a very unusual time to be working on a creative endeavor like this, particularly a big sprawling multi-project like this. How has everybody found working on this project during a global pandemic lockdown? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I think one of the harder things is, especially in comics, and we're in the middle of what would be convention season, so that tends to be a lot of touching base with people in person rather than just over emails, and just sort of being surrounded in that atmosphere where everyone is working on really cool and creative things. So I think not having that as sort of like a grounding moment in between your stretches of work has made things harder. And then of course just having a lot of extra things to worry about is never super fun when you're working on a big creative endeavor.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
How about yourself? Jake?
It's interesting because I'm normally office based, and now that I'm at home, I'm still on just a laptop. So a lot of the work that I actually do isn't really too much different. But I suppose it's just the way of working, like the environment you work in that's changed and does affect it. And even though I'm working just do the same thing, it's sort of like it's a bit, I'm not at work, so you tend to sort of just lose focus a bit. And I think having something like this to work on that you can really get stuck into and really enjoy, it definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, no, of course. How have you found the lockdown in Milan, Roberta?
Working during the lockdown was helpful because it was a distraction. These were very difficult months, stressful days, but working was something that distracted me from all and helped me a lot. So so thank you to Titan, to Jake, to Jody for the support, to Enrica for the support in this day, because without the job, I would have gone crazy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can I ask you, Roberta, what advice would you have for anybody who wants to become a comic book artist? It's a question we get asked all the time. Normally, when this is airing, we'll be at San Diego, and we get asked that question 100 times a day. So, what do you think? What advice would you give somebody?
Difficult question. I haven't a big advice, but just draw a lot, have a lot of passion, and don't be afraid. Because especially for the Italian artists, because many Italian artists are afraid of working for England or USA or Germany. We think that is impossible, but it's not true. Because it's very simple to work for England, for USA, and not is simple work in Italy. So so there are many possibilities. So don't be afraid, travel, and learn English better than me.
Your English is good, and actually, I think that's great advice. There's a good friend of mine called Giuseppe Camuncoli who does a lot of work for DC. He does a lot of work for Image, and so many great artists in Italy. So many. Like yourself, amazing.
Italy is the home of Dylan Dog, the greatest comic of all time.
Right, indeed. Yeah, very good.
One of the greatest comics of all times.
Nope, the greatest.
I mean, surely, you can't beat Danger Diabolik, right? They can't go wrong with that. There's so many great comics in Italy. It really is. Yeah. And I think the thing is, comics are highly respected. It has always seemed to me in Italy, which is such a great thing to experience, particularly if you've ever spent any time sneaking your comic books into a Liverpool football match and risking getting a sound beating. To actually be able to walk around the great cities of Italy and to have comic books respected in that way is an amazing thing, I think.
I would just say, if I may,
of course.
What you said is very true, and I 100% agree with everything that Roberta has said about not being afraid, because there is this big fear in the, especially young creatives in Italy kind of feel like you have to work for in very, very small projects, and there's this fear like I'm not ready to work for abroad, which is absolutely crazy. So I would absolutely say, do it. To everyone who feels like doing it, just try it and talk to professionals. And what I think is very, very counterproductive in Italy for young creatives is that the very big respect for the well-known titles for Bonelli or the other huge classics is balanced. Well, it's not very balanced, but it's met on the opposite side with the idea that comics are for kids. So you have the big names who are huge artists, and then everyone else thinks everything else is kind of for kids. So there is a big respect on one side, and on the other side there's a lot of misinterpretation of how big of a media comics is. And so many young creators are being, but that's just for kids, what do you actually want to do for a living? Like, well, you know, you can actually do it. So absolutely get rid of that fear and that mentality that you can't do this for a living, and work very hard. Absolutely. If you can travel, when traveling will be safe and possible again, do it. Come to the UK, go to America, go to conventions and talk to people, because that's going to change your view of the industry. And so good luck to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I mean, Big Guy, you spend a lot of time reviewing portfolios, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot. I mean, the only advice I look at a lot of portfolios. I think the advice I like to give is if you want to draw superhero comics, then you focus on your life drawing. You know, that's paramount, is make sure that you can do life drawing. But the main thing is, for any cartoonist, is you know, you do it because you love it. You don't do it because you want to be rich. You do it because you love comics. So as long as you enjoy what you're drawing, that's the most important thing to do. You know, the rest of it is just practice and whatever. But the main thing to do with comics is, if you want to be a cartoonist, just draw every day. Just draw. Don't watch TV. Draw. You know, every time you've got some downtime, just draw all the time. That's the only best advice you can give anybody who wants to draw comics. And don't take no for an answer. That's it.
And it's the same with writing them, right, Big Guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've often get asked that question: how do you break into comics? And I always say, well, it's really easy. There's only two ways to break into comics: being in the right place at the right time, and knowing the right person. That's all it takes to break into comics.
Just those two simple things.
Just those two simple things. Yeah. Just be at the right time and the right place. That's all you need. Everything else will be fine.
So James, outside of the comic book that we're talking about here, what other things from Time Lord Victorious have you really savoured and enjoyed thus far?
I think the maddest project is the immersive theatre experience, which is also the thing that I was so convinced would be cancelled, because when this all happened, I'd gone to Turkey to rescue my parents, because as I went to rescue my parents from Turkey, they closed the borders. So I was trapped in Turkey for a week, and by the time I got back, the world had ended. And I was convinced the entire project was going to be over. And instead, what has been amazing is that every single licensee has found a way. Oddly, madly, Titan have just got on and done their stuff, because it's almost business as usual for you guys. But it's things like Big Finish were recording with the Doctor using his son's garage band equipment in a garden shed. And the Immersive Theatre Project has been finding ways in which they can reopen safely and still have a full immersive theatre experience. The escape room is looking at how social bubbles can work so that they can reopen safely. The books are just so epic and extraordinary. And the great thing about books is that you can actually write a book without actually needing to be in an office. The thing that keeps on happening whenever I have a meeting about this project is not just how exciting it is, but how lucky we are. Because I genuinely thought the project would have been cancelled. But because all the licensees have all gone at every single stage, don't worry, there's a way through. We found a way of carrying on. I'm just there going, oh, this is amazing. I accidentally get to look good. And I haven't actually had to do any extra work. I've gone, oh, well, if you think you can carry on, then that's great. The whole thing is fabulously exciting. And the fact that one of the deep joys is that there will be toys. I've never worked on anything before where there will be toys. So even though Roberta is bored sick of drawing Daleks, I'm sure it's quite fun drawing the first dozen Daleks, but I'm sure right now you're over them. The idea that there'll be toys of these things that you've been drawing is incredibly exciting. And I can't wait to just waste shelf space on toys. I'm going to lose a whole shelf to this project.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you a question about the immersive Doctor Who. Am I right in thinking that's the same production company who do Immersive Gatsby? Is that right? Yes,
Immersive Gatsby is the first theatre thing that is reopening in London and in the UK. because the team behind it have spent so much time working on how to safely do theatre without killing your audience, which is one of what? You know, who knew 2020 would give us this gift?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the thing about those guys is immersive Gatsby. If you're a Gatsby fan, I'm a huge Gatsby fan. I did my thesis on Gatsby. I was very, very skeptical about whether it was going to work or not. And the reason I know immersive Doctor Who is going to be good is immersive Gatsby is incredible. It's a lot of fun, actually, and it really takes you into the heart of the novel. So I'm sure they're going to take you into the heart of the Who franchise in the same way. Those guys really know what they're doing. And I think that's something to be very excited about. So anybody who's watching this at San Diego, virtual San Diego Comic-Con, if you get the chance to go to London when the lockdown's over, when the world becomes more mobile, that's a real thing to see. Number one, go and see Forbidden Planet. Thanks, Nick. It's okay, I haven't forgotten. Go to Forbidden Planet and go to see immersive Doctor Who, because it'll be amazing. It'll be fantastic. That is awesome. Jody, let me ask you, is there anything that you can pluck out of what's coming that has been your favourite thing to work on this project? What the thing that's given you the most excitement?
I think coming up with like a villain that's scary enough that the Daleks are freaked out by them has been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see Roberta and Enrica's art for that. I think the Hound are going to be a pretty fun, messy, gross monster.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. We're all looking forward to that. And how about you, Jake? What's been the highlight of this project for you?
No, Jack. I'm sorry.
I think it's just seeing the vision come to life. Pretty much, I said it had been a lot of back and forth about what we actually do for this project, and then finally getting a story settled down and seeing Jody's script come in and seeing Roberta's art and Enrica's colours, bringing the actual project to life, and thinking, wow, we've actually done it. Here is a Doctor versus a Dalek story, and I'm a part of it, and it's like, whoa, yeah, that's been pretty cool.
So, guys, we've got to that point in our session here that if we were in the hall at San Diego, that person, the invigilator at the back of the room, would hold up that 2 minutes to go sign, and that's where we are now. So I've got one parting question for everybody, and Jody, I'd like to start with you. It's we've talked about who on Train to Doctor Who everybody's favourite characters are. If you had to pick one Doctor Who character, a doctor, a companion, or an alien, a monster, an adversary, who is it that you would put at the top of your list of being able to work on next?
Missy. Yeah, I'm probably always gonna answer Missy for that, just because she's so fun and twisted, and it's so good. I'd love to write more of her.
Yeah, right on. How about yourself, Enrica?
I think for me, if I had to choose a doctor, I'd probably say the 12th Doctor. And if I had to choose like another character, I'd probably say River. Ah,
great. Yeah. How about yourself, Roberta?
I think I choose Clara. I don't know. I love the character of Clara, and Clara with Capaldi, the best. And I think a River song.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, real favourites. How about yourself, Jake?
I actually think Mickey would be great, Mickey Smith. He always felt like he was sort of sidelined by the Doctor a bit, overshadowed. And I thought, no, he's just a regular guy trying to get on with it, And I think he's great compared to, the grandiose of the Doctor.
I think that's a very good point. He's a great actor as well, isn't he? I love that guy.
Big fan of Noel Clarke.
Yeah, he's the man for sure. Big guy, what about yourself?
Tom Baker again.
Yeah, nice and easy.
I can't. I've got to stay true to my core.
True to form. And yourself, James?
There are Daleks in Titan Comics. I don't think I could want anything more.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And on that killer note, I would like to say, Roberta, thank you. Enrica, thank you. Jody, thank you. Jake, thank you. James, thank you. David, big guy, thank you. And to the mysterious voice that you can't hear, but I can, Lauren Noding in the background there, running our visuals. Thanks so much, Lauren. This has been the Time Lord Victorious panel at Virtual San Diego 2020. Have a fantastic rest of show. and join us in the funny books with Doctor Who. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.